Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. So today I'm finally going to be sharing my top favorite books that I read in 2023. I read 155 books last year. I only had a very small selection of 5-star books out of all of those, but despite the fact that I think I was pickier last year, these are like some of my top favorite books. I've really found some amazing ones, so I'm excited to share them with you all. I am going to start with a few honorable mentions. These are favorite books of mine from the year, but with my top 10, I did want to be a little bit more selective. So for my honorable mentions, I have Out There by Kate Folk. This is a kind of speculative sci-fi collection of short stories, and this actually made me a believer in short stories. I have never liked them before, but I really loved this collection. The Patient by Jasper DeWitt. This is a psychological horror book that at no point did I have any idea where the story was going, and it was such a wild and fun ride. I really enjoyed it. It is written kind of like a Reddit creepypasta story. So I think if you like pen pal, but you want something that's less sad and more fun scary, you will really enjoy this. I loved it. Confessions by Kane Minato. This is a thriller that also kind of reads like short stories, each one where you're kind of being told the same event from another character's point of view, and each point of view sort of broadens your scope of what's happening in the story, and it left me with my jaw dropped. And then the last honorable mention is A Certain Hunger by Chelsea G. Summers. This is written as a fictional memoir following a female serial killer who is in prison for life after having a strong appetite for her victims. Now for my top 10, these are the 10 best books that I read last year. They're not ranked, but first up I have 2 books that I'm counting as one, and that is Ninth House and Hellbent by Leigh Bardugo. I read Ninth House for the first time this year and I became obsessed with it. I love it. And then I immediately read Hellbent right after it, and these books just made such a strong impression on me. They are dark academia, magical. You're following this main character, Alex, who can see ghosts. She is invited to Yale, where they have a secret society of magic users. She's invited into this sort of underground world of cults and magic and murder. Alex Stern is a new all-time favorite character of mine. I love her. I'm obsessed with her. I am sat for anything that Leigh Bardugo writes in the future. I was not really a Leigh Bardugo stan prior to this, but I am now. Next up, I have Butcher and Blackbird by Brynne Weaver. This is a rom-com, dark romance that I just had the most fun with. It's following these 2 rival serial killers who both kill other killers. So, you know, they're the good kind of serial killers. They strike up like a friendly rivalry where every year they will have a competition where they both get the name of somebody that they have to kill, and they're like competing each other to see who can kill that person first. And it is just so fun, and their romance was great. It's like friends to lovers, which I feel like is not what you expect to see in a serial killer romance, but I really enjoyed that. I don't know, I just had so much fun with it. I have to read you some of the content warnings because the content warnings themselves are really funny. Amateur surgery, skin ornaments, accidental cannibalism, not so accidental cannibalism, questionable use of a mummified corpse, ill-advised use of kitchen implements. It's a silly, goofy, fun time, and I loved it. The next romance on my list is Heartless by Elsie Silver. This is the second book in the Chestnut Spring series, and I am obsessed with this series. I actually read this book twice this year because I love it so much. This one is following a single dad and the new nanny that he has hired to help take care of his son. I am normally not the type of person who likes single dad nanny romances because I generally dislike the idea of like a romance with a man who like just falls in love with a woman because, oh, she comes to his house and she takes care of his kid and she cleans and cooks for him. That gives me the ick. But what I love so much about this one is that he is a very like take charge person, and he's actually so reluctant to accepting help. He does not want a nanny, but his family makes him hire one because he needs help. He won't ask for it. And even after she's hired, he doesn't want her to do anything. He's like, no, you're not gonna cook, you're not gonna do laundry, I'm gonna do all that for you. You're just here to play games with my son. I felt like it was a very healthy and mature dynamic. Their communication was really great. I loved it. Going into it, it had everything working against it in terms of my enjoyment and things that I generally don't like, and I was convinced. Next up, we have My Heart is a Chainsaw by Stephen Graham Jones. This is a horror book that literally changed my brain chemistry. I don't think I've ever read a horror where I became so obsessed with a main character. This book is following Jade, who has had a lot of struggles in her life. Her way of coping with them is that she is obsessed with slashers. She can tell you everything about any slasher movie, and she starts to see a series of things happening in her town that leads her to believe they are living a real life slasher. My favorite thing about Jade is that she's living her Delulu fantasy. Like, I related to her a lot, and then I was like, maybe I shouldn't be relating to her. Maybe that's saying something really not great about me. One of my favorite parts about this book is that there are excerpts of her essays that she's writing to one of her teachers all about slashers. It's like Slasher 101, and her essays were so good. I was like, oh my god, I just want to read a whole book of her essays and like dissecting slashers. I think because I love horror movies so much that any books that really delve into horror movies, I am so into. I really, really love that. Best Stephen Graham Jones book that I have read, and I already really loved his writing, but this is by far his best work. The next one is Lost in the Moment and Found by Seanan McGuire. This is the 8th book in the Wayward Children series, and I think it's my favorite. If you don't know, the Wayward Children series is a series following children who find portals into magical worlds. Usually these children are ones that are dealing with a lot of trauma and pain, and they just need an escape, and so this door opens up to a magical world where they're just gonna have fun, amazing adventures. So this one is following a main character who had a lot of trauma in her childhood. She was groomed and abused by her stepfather. She needed an escape, and she enters into this doorway that actually is like a traveling house. Unlike all the other books where the children just like go into one world, she enters this traveling house that kind of reminded me of like Howl's Moving Castle that is able to go to tons of different worlds. So I really, really love this one. I loved this main character, and you guys know the books in this series always end up on my favorites list. The next book I have is actually the very first book that I read in 2023, and that is The World Gives Way. This is a sci-fi dystopian where humans had to board this spaceship because Earth was no longer habitable for them and they need to travel to another planet, but that is going to take centuries. What I love so much about this book was the actual world and the spaceship, because the spaceship is gigantic and it was modeled to resemble Earth's ecosystems. So you have like mountain ranges, you have an underwater like Atlantis, Vegas world, you have a desert. It is very, very unique. I've never ever read a world like this. This is just obviously a favorite because this was the first book that I read this year, and now 155 books later, I still love it just as much. The next book that I have is so criminally underrated, it makes me angry, and that is Silver Under Nightfall by Rin Chupeco. This book was so amazing, and I feel like not enough people have read it. If you like Castlevania, you will love this. This is Castlevania. This also combines so many genres. I just feel like this book will work for a wide range of people. It has almost like a historical Regency romance vibe to it. It's fantasy with like incredible world building. It has horror. It's so, so great. So this is a book about vampires, and you're following a main character named Remy, who is basically a vampire hunter. In this world, there is a new strain of vampires that is created, and nobody knows where they came from, but they are more dangerous and deadly than regular vampires. So Remy teams up with these two vampire royals to figure out who is creating these new vampires and stop them. This book is just like, the world building is insane. There's a polyamorous romance that I was obsessed with. Like I said, it also has this like historical Regency vibe to it. There's horror, like some of the horror elements and like scenes in here actually made me so stressed. I feel like if there's one book that I really, really want people to read from this video, it is this one, because it is so underrated. Now we're getting into what I would consider to be my top 3. So this next one was technically a reread. However, when I first read this in like 2021 and I put it on my favorites list, I feel like nobody listened to me because the cover that it had at the time was a sin against humanity. So we're giving it a redo, all right? We're giving it its place. That is the Mindfuck series by St. Abbey. And can we talk about this stunning, oh my god, finally she got an edition that she deserved. It is a thriller revenge epic following my all-time favorite character in life, and that is Lana Myers. Lana, when she was a teenager, she was attacked by some of the boys in her town. She was left basically for dead, and ever since then she has been plotting her revenge against them, against the town, against everybody who wronged her, and she has turned into a badass serial killer. This is the best, good for her, the best revenge book that I have ever read. It's amazing. It's amazing. And I had to put it on here again to give her her flowers that she deserves. The next one is Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies by Heather Fawcett. Again, technically this is 2 books because I also read the second book and they're both amazing. I just feel like this is a combination of so many of my favorite things. This series is following Emily Wilde, who is a scientist, academic, and she is studying fairies and writing the first ever encyclopedia of fairies. And so she travels to this Scandinavian village where she's going to be studying fair folk there, and her co-worker, academic rival, Bamblebee, shows up and they have a very slow burn romance. I said in my review for this was that it is as if Veronica Speedwell had a romance with Howl from Howl's Moving Castle, written by Holly Black. That is the vibes of this series, and book 2 was just as good as book 1. I give them both 5 stars. I might have even liked book 2 a little bit more. I don't know. They're both like neck and neck for me. I'm just in love with this series so much. I love Emily, I love Bamblebee, I love all the side characters. I love that it's written as her like academic journal entries and her research. Just everything about this book was so perfectly for me. And then the last book, which is actually my top favorite book of the year. I'm actually curious right now in the comments, write what your guess is for what you think my top favorite book is, and then tell me if you were correct. But my favorite book of 2023 was Bloom by Delilah S. Dawson. So this is a romantic, sapphic, cottagecore horror book following a woman who just got out of a relationship with her boyfriend, and one day she's at the farmer's market and she sees this woman with a booth selling cupcakes and plants, and she's like, oh my god, that is the most beautiful woman I've ever seen in my life. She looks like an elf. She's stunning. She's beautiful. It was a moment of sapphic revelation where she's like, oh my god, do I like women? So the next weekend she goes back to the farmer's market to see this woman again. Every time she goes, they're talking, she's eating cupcakes, she's falling deeper and deeper under her spell. They start dating, they start a romance. It is so romantic, and I was like, oh my god, the sapphic yearning. The descriptions of what it feels like to realize you like women for the first time. She describes the feeling of being drawn to this woman as Persephone eating the pomegranate seeds. But lurking in the background of this book is something sinister, something dark. There's red flags. And slowly it all starts to unfold and it comes together in this deeply disturbing way. The ending of this book is cemented in my brain. I will never forget the feeling that I felt reading the final pages. This is just hands down the best book that I read in 2023 and definitely a top favorite of all time. I cannot wait to reread it. So those were my best books of 2023. Let me know in the comments what your favorite book that you read last year was. Despite the fact that overall, I feel like I was a lot pickier with my reading, these are all just like exceptional books. So thank you guys for watching. If you liked this video, please like and subscribe and check out my Patreon where I post tons of exclusive content. I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!